Anyone want to?
Come on. I'm actually started the streaming now, so I'm just kind of getting up. Need to get the link, so give me.
So we had a wee chat with Trevor and David last night, and there were a few hints of more things to follow and a bit more crack to follow. So I'm going to hand you over to Trevor Dickinson and David Pleasance.
Thank you very much. The only problem is we haven't got any beer. No. We work better on beer.
Well, sometimes.
Dave, we've done a few of these, haven't we?
We have.
Yeah, and usually ends up being a bit crazy. Usually ends up being a bit crazy. Can I ask you a few questions? It might be a nice idea. Okay. And then I think we should throw it over to the audience, to the Amiga, to ask us some questions, and I'm sure they've got lots of these things they want to ask us. I'm just trying to think, when you first came to my attention, and I remember this guy with a big beard around here, big curly hair. Yeah. And
I wore a younger man's clothes again.
Yeah. Sorry, didn't we all? Right. But I wanted to ask about the factory in Corby in England. Was it Northampton?
Yeah,
Northamptonshire. Yeah. Just how big was the Commodore factory in the UK?
We bought a 10-acre site and filled it. It was massive. It was assembly lines. It was warehousing and storage and offices. It was absolutely huge, all purpose built. And we got, I think it was a £5 million grant from the local council. Because what happened with Corby was that there was a British steel factory there, and British Steel went up to Scotland and got all of these Scottish steel workers and moved them down to Corby, and then very promptly closed it all down and left all these Scottish people there with no jobs. It was really awful. But we inherited the fallout from that because we employed a lot of young people. I think from memory, at one time I think we had something like 570 employees, and a lot of them were young people on the production line. And these young people had a massive chip on both shoulders because they'd been moved from Scotland. Their parents had brought them down and then left without work. And the sad thing is that we're trying to build fairly, I guess, intricate products with assembling the 64s and big 20s and plus 4s and everything else. And yet we had a major disruption. We even had vandalism in the girls' toilets. They were just so pissed off. Not at us, but they took it out on us. It was really bizarre. That was Corby, and everybody moved down except, in fact, there was 2 or 3 people because when I joined Commodore, they were in Slough, Ajax Avenue, Slough. And the MD didn't move down because he's got children in school, and John Baxter, the MD was Howard Stanworth. John Baxter was the marketing manager, and they decided not to move because they had to move all their kids and everything.
So, I mean, you mentioned 64s, big 20s, plus 4s.
Yeah.
No Amigas?
No.
Because, was it closed before?
Yeah, it was too early for Amigas. Yeah.
Okay. So we've talked a number of times, usually over a few drinks, and we've talked about some of the interesting parts of your career. I'm particularly interested in the time when you had become joint managing director alongside Colin Proudfoot.
Yeah.
But before that, what were you doing?
Well, directly before that, I was vice president of Commodore Inc., the sales company based in Westchester, where all the engineering was done. We did have assembly facility in Westchester, but not really much of one. Yeah, I was vice president, and basically I've been nagging at Mehdi Ali for probably 2.5 years.
And you didn't spit when you said that.
No.
I'm trying to think of Beth Richards, who was the technician,
engineer,
towards the end of Commodore's life, which was working on the CD32 and all the really sexy stuff.
No, she was working on the CD1200.
Yeah, and actually doing FMV stuff and all sorts, right? Yeah. And every time she says Mehdi Ali, she goes Mehdi Ali. And every time, she never misses it.
Well, the problem is if I did that, I'd have an absolutely dry mouth forever. No, Mehdi, I've been nagging Mehdi to let me loose in America, because America was underperforming by a zillion. It was incredible how bad. And nobody knew why. But I've been nagging him, so let me loose, I can bloody sort it out one way or another. And it was an interesting time actually, because when I arrived, I had a team of people already. I had 3 sales guys and a team of marketing people, all very good people. So we had a meeting all on our own in one of the boardrooms, and I said, all right guys, what's going on? Tell me the truth. And they said, well, we can't sell anything. Excuse me. And I said, what do you mean you can't sell anything? And they said, we can't. What do you mean? Well, our customers are not paying their bills, so therefore we're not allowed to sell them anything. I said, well, why aren't they paying the bills? We don't know. It's absolutely true. So anyway, I said, okay, look, I need to get to the bottom of it. So I said to them, make some appointments, and I'll come along with you, and we'll find out what's going on. And the very first place we went to was actually Sears in Chicago. And I can remember it like it was yesterday. I think it was about the 13th floor of Sears Tower. And we sat in the boardroom, and I think there was 12 executives of Sears all around this boardroom table. It was my sales guy, Steve Salas, and me. So I sat down, introduced myself, said, you know, I've been with Commodore for 9 years, or whatever it was at the time. And, you know, I've come to the US to try and get business moving and what have you. And I said, all I ask of you guys is for the truth, and I'll give you the truth. And I said, we're a company of integrity, and I certainly, my word is my bond. So I said, do you mind if we start by asking you a very direct question? Would you mind telling me why you're not paying your bills? Very simple, Mr. President. We're waiting for you to come and take all our stock back. Okay. I said, well, you know, 9 years at Commodore, I've never known us to be a lending library. That's exactly what I said. And I said, you know, we just... Anyway, next thing you know, they pushed a letter across the table to me, face down. And it was a signed letter by Jim Dion, who was the president of sales of Commodore Inc., sales company. And it was a sale or return agreement. And guess what it was for? CD TVs. He'd laden them with CD TVs. Now let's be honest about it. CD TV is a product that was so far ahead of its time, even hardened, you know, technical people found it difficult to sell. Can you imagine the people in Sears who find it difficult to ring up a bloody till and put something in a plastic bag? Them selling the CD TVs?
You can't say that these days, by the way.
Well, no, I just did.
I
thought my lips moved.
It's not allowed, it's not allowed. It's not allowed, is it? Right? No, we can't say anymore.
Okay, well, I'll
but
stop my voice.
You're a bit older, so you could say it.
Yeah, I've earned the right. I'm pensionable. Anyway, so there am I staring at this letter, which is signed by Jim Dion, the president of the sales company, offering sale or return on CD TVs, and they wanted them out. Don't blame them. They should never have been sold them in the first place. This, by the way, happened with every store I went to was the same deal. What had happened, of course, is that Jim Dion had obviously made up his quarterly quota and claimed his commission and bonus on all these sales, but he wouldn't take them back because it would have exposed him. So there's a situation where I'm faced with, what the hell do I do here? I had to really think hard. Anyway, I said, look, I'll be honest with you, you should never have been sold that product. It was ridiculous, and that's a mistake on our part. And I said, we are honourable, and I will make sure that we take that product back. I think it was something like $460,000 worth. And I said, look, I said, the crazy thing is that we've got products that you should be selling. You know, we've got the Amiga 500 and it's doing really, really well. It's flying out the door. And I said, you guys should be selling that. And I said, how about, I said, I don't really want to start my career in the US with a big negative on my books. I said, how about I'll take all that stock back and you give me an order for Amiga 500 to the same value, so at least I'm not starting with a negative, it's neutral. And if you do that for me, I will produce a pack specifically for Sears that you can sell all on your own. And luckily they went for it.
Was that in a, you know, like a Batman pack?
Yeah. It was. I actually had it all designed by the people that did all the work for me in the UK anyway. But we had it produced in the US because it was cheaper than shipping it. But anyway, cut a long story short. So I did this, and of course, by that quarter end, all I'd got was neutral figures. I hadn't got any sales because I'd taken all the CDTVs back. Now, Mehdi Ali didn't know anything about this, and it just happened that at the quarter end meeting I should have gone to, the sales meeting in New York. I was in Manhattan. I was on holiday. My two sons are from the UK, and I used to have a boat which I kept down at Rehoboth Beach, and I was actually on the boat. And anyway, so he's in this meeting with Jim Dion, and Ali rings me up. What the F is this? And I said, what are you asking me for? He said, well, because you're the person who's taken this product back. I said, no. I said, would you just ask Jim Dion to hand you the envelope I asked him to give you? Which he did. And of course, inside there was copies of all of the sale or return agreements. Because Mehdi didn't know anything about it. So Mehdi sort of shouting up at me, and I said, look, Mehdi, I've now got us back trading with everybody in the US. Take it or leave it. We had no option but to take back that product because it was written in writing. And I said, but I've now got this trading with everybody. I'll tell you what, I was glad I wasn't in that room because he would have gone berserk. But you know, the thing is, this is very typical of Commodore. They didn't audit anything, didn't know anything about this. How can you run a business if you don't even know what you've sold and what you haven't sold? So that was got the US. And we started trading. And then, of course, what happened was, after I'd been trading with them for a while, I went to Mehdi and I said, right, my job here for the moment is done. What are you talking about? And I said, I can't do any more here. I can't sell any more to any of the customers. What are you talking about? I said, look, Mehdi, you and I both know we've got the Amiga 1200 coming in the next couple of months. 3 months, whatever it's going to be. And if I sell them any more 500, the moment the 1200 comes out, they're going to say, take them back. Because they'll feel that there's an obligation there, even though there isn't. I said, however, if I leave now and do work something else, if they reorder 500s because they need them, that's their problem, not mine. Which makes business sense, and that's what happened. So I ended up leaving, and the plan was I was going to go back to the US once the 1200s were launched. But in fact, I went back to the CEL business, so all the international business I was doing, which had taken a bit of a tumble since I wasn't involved with it. And then the next thing I know, I'm summoned back to the UK and forced into the MD-ship, which I'd already turned down once before. I was forced into it, so I never went back to the US.
I was always very intrigued. You had the joint managing director with Colin. Why did they do a joint managing director? It's quite unusual.
I did it.
It's your idea.
Yeah, the fact of the matter is that, I know what I'm good at. And I can read a balance sheet and all that stuff, but I'm not a financial person. I can't control. And on the very basis that the reason I was summoned back was because Commodore International was in big trouble, and we needed to gather every single penny we could get in. And I'm not qualified for that. So I said, I'll take this role on, but I want to be sole control of sales and marketing because that's what I'm good at. And and Colin was already working there. I think he was a director. But he was already working. I said, make Colin co-MD with me, and between us we can get us out of trouble.
You obviously didn't do a very good job, did you?
No,
because you made lots of losses.
Yeah,
UK kind of made lots of losses.
We did. We had.
Can you explain that?
Yeah, I can explain that. This is I think it's less prevalent now because the tax authorities have gone on to it. But Commodore used to play.
I don't know. Google, come on, Apple.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, but
Ireland. Oh, I didn't say that.
The Commodore used to play the transfer pricing game, and I'll give you an example. These are just figures; they're not necessarily the right figures, but you'll understand what I mean. So Commodore UK would buy its product. Let's say we bought the Amiga 500s and we bought them for $200. Or let's say pounds, that's easier for me. So if we bought them from Commodore International, we paid £200 for them. Now we would warrant them, we would market them, VAT and everything else, and we would sell them for £400, take away what our expenses were, and that was our profit. So if we then make a profit and we're selling a lot of Amigas and 64s and everything else, and then suddenly the taxman sort of wants to grab at us. So all we then do is, instead of paying £200 and selling it for £400, you're suddenly paying £400, and every one you sell, you're making a loss because you paid £400 for it. So Commodore International was making the profit at the point of sale from us, but we weren't. So we ended up with, I can tell you exactly, at the time when we declared bankruptcy in the UK, which was 14 months after Commodore went under, we tried to sell Commodore UK as a going concern to ESCOM, and the big carrot was that we had £6 million worth of tax credits, which meant if they'd have carried on our business, putting their business through Commodore UK, they could have claimed that. That would have meant
so
probably...
they'd pay no tax until they had more than £6 million profit.
Absolutely, yeah. And it was a no-brainer, but they said, we'll only buy Commodore UK if you and Colin stay. And there's no way I wanted to work for them and nor did Colin, because they weren't ethical people. And then the guy said, Manfred Schmidt, he said, how are you going to feel having to lose, all your people are going to lose their jobs? And we said, you just explained why we don't want to work for you. Because that's exactly the kind of attitude that we don't want to work with.
On a more positive note, how many Amigas do you think your division, your operating division, your company sold?
Ooh. You know, I honestly don't know, but I can tell you that I did a sort of back of the envelope calculation one day about how many computers I think I've sold, and I'm talking about everything from 16s to plus 4s and Amigas and 64s, and I think personally, not my team, personally, I think I sold 2.4 million computers in 12 years. Not bad, is it?
Now, so which was the most, I guess, the most successful division of Commodore with selling Amiga computers?
Oh, with Commodore UK, without any shadow of a doubt. Once we launched the bundle concept, and the numbers just went through the roof. What we did is we made Commodore the trendy product. The Amiga 500 was the trendy product that everybody wanted. Yeah. Very thrilling, actually.
But you started selling pets, didn't you?
Yeah, again, I've mentioned all along that I honestly believe that Commodore was always destined to go bankrupt because they never ever had a business plan of any kind. And I can prove that because I was recruited specifically to sell pets into the retail market. Business product into retail. This was before PCs. And I was there 3 months doing research, deciding who I was going to sell to and getting everything ready. And then they rang me up and they said, I've been there about 3 months, a bit less. And they said, oh, your numbers come up, 64 is going crazy. We need somebody to head up national accounts, looking after the big boys, and you're it. And then said, oh, and by the way, we haven't got enough pet product to sell into retail anyway. I've been recruited to do that job. They hadn't even got enough product. So that was my first example of how disorganized and unplanned they were.
Now, some of these stories I've heard before, but I think if you were here last night, you heard me talking about your new book. Well, everyone heard me talking about the new book, which is now, what, April, May, you think?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
And I presume there'll be stories in there which we haven't heard before?
Oh, of course, yeah. The trouble is that people keep asking me, and I keep telling them, but before you know, everybody knows what's in the book, but I don't care, because you people have paid for it already. There are some stories that I've held back, and
any sneaky ones you can tell us? You know, no one's listening, it's not being filmed or anything. No one will say anything, it's all secret here. We're a little community.
Well, I'm trying to think what I haven't told you, because I've told most things.
Well, you've told me lots of things, but if one I don't know, that'll be one they won't know.
Yeah, but what don't you know? Yeah, this is a little snippet that I only remembered the other day, and I've actually got to go back into the chapter and add it in. One day Mehdi Ali rang me up and he said, right, he said, I want you and I want a couple of our allies, mainly from the software industry, to come with me. We're going to Taiwan. We're going to meet up with somebody there, and I want you to do a little presentation just about what you're doing in the UK. Fine. So I took, I think it was Colin Stokes from Ocean, he was the sales director, and somebody else I can't even remember.
Ocean of the software company, the games company.
Yeah, they're the guys who did Batman, and I obviously had a good relationship with them. So anyway, we arrive in Taipei, and we go to Acer, and we're there about half an hour, and then Mehdi says, right, he says, what can you just tell them, kind of do a presentation about what's happening in the UK, because he said himself, he said we are their flagship division. And I wasn't really prepared, because anyway, it turns out that his plan was he was trying to sell Commodore to Acer, but he forgot to tell me. He forgot to tell the people I brought along that, because I would have done a presentation that would have blown your socks off if I'd have known. He didn't tell us why he wanted us there. Now, what kind of imbecile is that? And so he's scratching his head with him, so that didn't go down very well, did it? I'm not surprised, seriously. How bizarre is that? But it's absolutely true.
It's quite ironic, really, because ESCOM bought Commodore, Gateway bought ESCOM, some other some other company bought Gateway, can't remember who it was, and eventually they were acquired by Acer. So, talk about going round in circles, it all comes around again, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
If you think back to your Commodore years, what would be your, I mean, you talk, the inside story is going to spill the beans, and it's going to talk about some of the reasons Commodore failed, but there must have been good times at Commodore as well.
Well, look, I mean, I was there, I think, about 12.5 years, and to be honest with you, I don't think I'd change a second of it, no matter what happened, because it was dynamic, it was adrenaline pumping times, and all I know is that when we got things right, boy did we get them right. You know, we were very innovative. It's hard to say that, isn't it? And let me give you an example, right? This, and I was telling somebody at breakfast this morning. The PCs that we had for a while we had PC 10, 20 and 30. They were not in my range of products because I was a consumer products guy. But I wanted to do something different, and I wanted to put a pack together with the PCs, because in those days...
Wash your mouth out.
Yeah. No, but hear me out. In those days, nobody even knew how to put a bloody PC and a monitor together. It was that new. So I came up with the idea, let's do a pack. And inside the pack, we had a video, which we had professionally recorded, and that was Tim Brooke Taylor, the comedian. And the scene was, he was working in an office with a secretary, and their office was a bit of a mess. And he said, we've got to get this all sorted. And he comes in with this big box. So anyway, the box that we had designed was the same box for each of the 3 models. But what we did was we color-coded, I think it was turquoise, pink and yellow, a strip around the end of each of the big box, because, to determine the 10, the 20 and the 30. We also matched all the peripherals with the right code. So if you weren't sure, as if you bought a yellow banded thing, you knew it worked with the yellow banded PC. Anyway, I didn't have any budget really, because it was not my product. We got enough budget to do the video, but I wanted the package to be illustrative of people in working roles, pictures of them, so that people could relate to it. So if you were a painter and you saw a picture of a painter, you know, this is for business for me, or what have you. But of course we didn't have any money at all to pay for actors to come and be photographed. So we did it. We were all the two. It was so fun.
You're telling me somewhere there's a picture of you
absolutely
putting a PC together?
No, there's a picture. No, you must be joking. No, what we did, we wanted to represent all kind of trades and professions on the pack, and so we had a guy with a hard hat on, we had a Julie.
Come on, admit it.
Wait for it. We had Julie, who was one of our secretaries. She dressed as a nurse, and it was just typical jobs that you'd see. And I was a professor. I had a flat hat on. You relate to this, John Paul, and a flat hat and everything on. And I mean, it was just such a laugh.
Are there any of those pictures still available?
I'm trying desperately to get hold of one.
Because that would be funny. Sorry, that would be.
No, it is funny. It is
that
funny.
would be really, really interesting to see.
But you must admit, that was creative, and it was definitely, off the wall.
Didn't you colour code all the cables as well, though?
No.
So that you could actually know which one plugged in where.
No.
Because that came in later as well. Some of the other.
Yeah, I don't know.
Gateway did it.
But what I can tell you is that one of our dealers was in fact an IBM dealer as well. And he rang us up and said, I just want to let you know, IBM have just come in and bought one of each of your packs and want to see what you're doing. But it's just about innovation, really. And, we persuaded everybody to get dressed up and take their photograph, and they all came on the pack. And, I mean, you must admit it was a good idea. We had a laugh.
What year was that? Can you remember?
Oh, my guess, we were at Corby, so my guess is it was probably 85.
Okay, in 1984, we did something similar. Well, I
must have stolen it from you then.
Yeah. In fact, I was it was an oil rig, and it was showing all the people on the rig what jobs they did. And we had this artist create this big graphic to go in a brochure. And
yeah, but that wasn't genuine. That was rigged.
Now, if anyone knows David, he's full of jokes. And that's one of them. No, you have to laugh now. So we went around the office and we got all the staff, and they had different jobs on the rig. So I think I was the company man, of course.
No.
And they made my hair like this.
Oh,
I
right.
had black hair in those days. How did they know?
Yeah, but
I had a great big black moustache.
And you mean you haven't changed it since?
No, it's a wig, a bit like yours, right?
Yeah.
But it's amazing how some of these ideas, cross boundaries and industries.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But I'm desperately trying to find a pack or at least a photograph of the pack.
That would be so good because it would actually go well in the book as well.
Yeah, I mean, I did mention that in the book about this pack, but I just don't have a picture of it.
Now, your book's coming out April, May. It's a Kickstarter backed, and so a lot of people already put money into it. Will get the book automatically.
Yeah.
But if someone hasn't got the book, what happens then? Can they order it?
Yeah, I've got my own little website which is called Downtime Publishing.
Slowly, so they can write it down. Right.
Downtimepublishing.com.
Okay.
And
I didn't see anybody writing there.
No,
they've all backed the Kickstarter project.
I'm pretty sure they have. But I'd like to explain actually why the book has been delayed, and because there's a very valid reason. And that is that when I first announced the Kickstarter, I'd been promised by R.J. Michael, who is, one of the gods really of Amiga. And R.J., I love him a bit. He's a gorgeous man, but he's definitely on that fine line between genius and insanity. And anyway, he promised me right from the beginning he was going to write a chapter, and he kept promising and promising and promising and promising and not delivering. And then we got to the point where, in order for me to release the book, that at the timescale I'd said, which is November, in time for Christmas, all of the publishers, all of the printers were booked because everybody wants their book out for Christmas, and I just couldn't get a slot. So I decided, right, well, I need to delay the book. But what I'll do is I will try and add in further chapters, because to be honest with you, when I read what I'd written over a period of months, it wasn't the story that I wanted. It wasn't really. I mean, it was in a way about Commodore. But it was more a story about David Pleasance because it's through my eyes, and I'm relating everything that happened. And I didn't want it to be that. I wanted it to be about Commodore. So I decided, well, what I'd like to do is to get more people from within Commodore to write their perspectives. And so, for example, at Noise in October, I've got Jeff Porter, who's the guy who designed the Amiga 500. He's writing a chapter. I've got Ron Nicholson writing a chapter, Randall Jessup writing a chapter, and I've got, there's a guy called Wim Mulders, his name is a very difficult name. He was in charge of Commodore Benelux,
I hope they write it, not this typical stuff. It's the inside stuff.
Well, I was just about to say.
Remit, yeah?
I was just about to say that what Women's written. I mean, I say in my book, I tell the truth about this guy called Bernard Van Tienen, who was in charge of Commodore Holland, and he was a crook. He was a crook through and through, and I've really written about that. But Wim knew him even more intimately, and he's told me some stories about false accounting. That's going to be in the book. Actually, Bernard Van Tienen's dead now, so I don't care. I wouldn't have cared anyway, because I'm telling the truth. And Bernard Van Tienen, of course, became one of the directors of ESCOM. Surprise, surprise. But anyway, Bernard Van Tienen was issued a lawsuit for a lot of money, several million guilders, by the Dutch liquidator. As was Petro Tkachenko. He was served a big lawsuit as well. But they were all protected because Mehdi Ali and Irving Gould, et al., all of the board, they took out, just 2 days before they declared bankruptcy, they took out an insurance policy to protect officers and directors from being prosecuted. And they paid $5 million for this policy, which was non-cancelable, non-retractable, and all of that stuff, so that the insurers could not get out of it. But that $5 million they spent was creditors' money, it wasn't their money.
You mentioned R.J. Michael. He doesn't need any defending because he can stand on his own 2 feet. But actually, towards the end of last year, his mother was dying, and she actually died just before Christmas. So I guess he had other things on his mind as well.
Yeah, in fact, I can add much more meat to that story. I was over in San Francisco with a couple of the guys from Friend, and we had a meeting with RJ. We actually had dinner with him, and we were in this restaurant. And what happened was that, I mean, RJ is one of these incredible visionaries. But we introduced him to Hogner, and Hogner, who's my boss and has designed the Friend Unifying platform, is also an incredible visionary. And so RJ asked Hogner to take the floor, and Hogner was talking, and I could tell you I was watching RJ. Every few seconds his jaw was dropping further and further, because what Hogner was talking about was just incredible. Anyway, RJ was absolutely thrilled to bits, and he said, "Look, guys," he said, I can't let this go on without taking it further." So he said, "Are you guys available on Wednesday? Come to my house. We'll get some pizzas in." But he said, "I want to continue this conversation because it's enthralling." And it was all arranged. The next day his mum died, so we didn't go. So I just wanted to fill that in, because that, we actually were there, physically there with him, and of course it did change him, as naturally it would, Yeah.
What was interesting for the last 2 or 3 years, you actually came back on the Amiga scene for the Amiga 30th, wasn't it? That's what's really brought you back in.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, after we were cheated out of the management buyout, I was really bruised and battered.
Just so I'm sure everyone knows, but when Commodore went bust, Commodore UK kept trading for 14 months, 18 months,
yeah, 14.
and put together a plan to buy out Commodore and the assets.
Yeah.
A pretty credible plan, and in the end you were thought to buy some insider dealing, but that'll all come out in the book. So, right, I'll let you go on from there.
Yeah, so I mean, I was battered and bruised because we put such a lot of work into it. We've got a fantastic business plan, and I can back that up by telling you that in 1994, with the help of some youngest in my brain, Cubers and Ivan, yeah. Sorry.
It's all right, I've heard the stories. So
yeah, but with the
I'm
help
younger and I can retain the information for about 5 minutes.
All right, yeah. Yeah, but with the help of Cubers and Ivan, something will fall off this chair. Cubers and Ivan, we raised in 1994 $50 million. Now that's hard to do today, but we raised that money because we had a very, very credible and really good business plan. And anyway, we got cheated out of it. I was really bruised after that, and so I just got out, under the radar, and I changed my whole life. I remarried, I moved to Australia, and all sorts of things happened. And I was completely out of the scene. And then one day I got a phone call from the guys Marvin and Marcel, who were running the Amsterdam Amiga 30 event, asking if I would go over and be a keynote speaker. And they said, how much do you want? What fee will you charge? And I said, I won't charge a fee, but I don't think it should cost me any money. So if you wanted to pay me my airfare, and I don't care, it can be budget airline, I don't care, and a bed for the night, then that'll be fine. So I went and I got on stage, and I don't even know what I said. I can't remember because I was shell-shocked. But it was, when I got on stage there, that's when the guy, some friend who had actually taken a booth there, approached me, told me what their plans were, and asked me to join them. So I came back into the scene like that. It was amazing. And I'll be honest with you, I'm extremely humbled because everybody sort of treats me like some kind of rock star. And I don't know, I haven't deserved that. I just did, I think, a good job.
But you do play the flamenco guitar?
Well, I have been known to, yeah. Not recently.
No modesty, you're at a professional level.
I was, yeah. One time.
So actually, if I hadn't fallen down, there'd be no next generation Amiga, so I wouldn't be here.
Oh, okay. So you do have me.
Every
another beer.
Every cloud has got a silver lining.
That's true, yeah.
Now, if anyone was here last year, you'll notice that I'm wearing my usual red and white shoes, but these are not my usual ones. I actually bought these in Wellington. I can't believe it. They were actually selling them.
They're Wellington boots?
No.
Sorry.
Pussy boots. Sorry, yeah. So they are new shoes. It's the first show, so I've christened them at this show. So these forever be the island shoes now.
Oh, okay. The island, yeah. Now, there's something I want to tell you guys, but I must preface it by saying this is not a promise. It is not a promise because there's a lot of things that can happen in between. But some of you may know that I was invited to the Retro Computer Museum in Leicester a few weeks ago. Leicester's not far from where I live. And I was again the guest speaker, and they charged entries for that, and it was all to raise money for the museum, which was great. And while we were there, Andrew, Andy, the guy who runs the place, pointed out they'd got this CD 1200, one of only 9 examples of the prototypes that was ever made. I've tracked down where that came from, by the way, and as it happens, it came from a very good friend of mine, Malcolm and Rona Sargent, who used to have Cavendish Commodore Centre in Leicester. Anyway, cut a long story short, we did a little video on it, and then the next thing you know, there's this thing started about who would buy one of these if we could get one. You know, in other words, if we could get them remade. And somehow or other my name was put on it, and I didn't do that, but that's okay. And it's been an incredible response, because I think we've got something like 450 people who've all said they want to buy one, and we haven't even promoted it yet. Now, I had this concept about if we were able to produce the CD 1200 again, maybe we could make it something a bit more than just the CD 1200. So I had a chat with some technical people, and I've consulted Dave Haney, I've consulted Paul Lasser. Paul Lasser was the guy who designed 4000. He works for me, a friend, not me directly, but as a friend, a great engineer. And Beth Richard, who was the lead engineer on it in the first place. So she's the one who told me about there only ever being 9 prototypes. And she's since discovered some early drawings that she thought she hadn't got. Anyway, what I did, I've approached these people and said, what if we can produce what is essentially the CD 1200, but we add a few things into it. For example, we add a couple of SD slots. We enable it, we'll have a Raspberry Pi inside. We enable it to be, the concept is that we want to make it a friend product. So we initially said, let's put in a small router. But as Dave pointed out, every man and his dog's got their own router, so we don't need to do that. But anyway, the concept is that we end up with a product which can also be a standalone product in its own right. So it doesn't have to be, add on to a 1200, but those people who want a 1200. We're also looking at, should we make it Blu-ray compatible? because actually Blu-rays are cheaper to make than DVDs. That's probably not a good option, but what I'm trying to say to you is that we put forward all of these suggestions and said, what if, what if, what if? And I only got a reply back from Dave Haney about 3 days ago. Most of what we've said, what we've suggested is doable. And so what will probably happen, I said, I must promise me that you understand I can't guarantee this is going to happen. But we think that there is enough, if we promote this, there'll be enough people to actually do a Kickstarter to fund it. But I've also got, and as it happens, Trevor knows this person as well, somebody in Italy who has been wanting to invest in some kind of Amiga hardware or some kind of Commodore hardware. He was interested in getting, in investing in 65, and I talked him out of that completely because it would be a nonsense idea. But I think, I haven't spoken to him yet, but I think if we talk to him about the CD1200 and what we plan to do with it, making it a friend-compatible product as well, a bit like a Chromebook, but friend, that's what we're talking about. And I think you would invest in it too. So I just want you to get your heads around the idea about it and see what you think, because if this is a viable proposition, and we've yet to do costings and all that sort of thing, but it looks from the outset like it could be a viable proposition, and it might be really interesting.
Why would you bother Kickstarter if it was a viable proposition? You just fund it and you do it.
Yeah, but we are not, friend, we're not going to be hardware, whatever we do. And so therefore our remit is we are never going to manufacture hardware. I mean, we have a relationship with Huawei, and Huawei could be the people who manufacture it for us. They've got a factory in China.
I wish someone would tell me, why do they call it that name? Huawei, Huawei, I don't know how to pronounce it.
I have no idea.
Anybody else? I know they're spying on us.
It's a Chinese.
Then all the governments are spying on us anyway. So
it's a Chinese name, like Hoki Koki.
See, you can't say that again. Yeah. I'm sorry. One more time, that's your second warning. Right? This is the political correctness era now.
Yeah, whatever.
Correctness is racist, apparently, and homophobic. I read that on the
yeah, no, we don't have a relationship. We're just friends. See, I beat you to it.
Very good.
Yeah. So anyway, I don't know what
I think we should go on.
Yeah,
ask a question.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, if anybody wants to ask any questions about that.
Or any questions at all, because I think we've rattled on enough. I'm sure there's some questions out there. Don't be shy.
Deathly silence.
At least one question.
Yes.
A question. Could you tell us a little bit about the operations for Commodore in Ireland? Because obviously they came under the jurisdiction of Commodore UK. I was Apple's first salesperson of the year back in '82, and we were based in Galway. And we used to have a battle royale with a company called Declan Europe, and they were the Commodore agents, and it was us against them well before IBM came into the picture. And Commodore PET had a huge advantage in many ways. You could network and share drives, and you could share storage space and printers and so on. We couldn't do that with the Apple II, which was our big flagship model at the time, in spite of...
Seamus, what year was that? What years was it?
1981, 82.
Because that's before Davidson.
Yeah, I joined in '83, and in '83 our Irish distributor was a guy called Morris Cohen, if I remember rightly.
Morris, yes. That was Tomorrow's World. They were based up in Dublin. Yeah, I remember Morris.
Yeah, we also had somebody in on the other side, across the border. I can't remember who that was. I do remember I was very reluctant to go because in those times there was those other things, and I eventually agreed and flew into Belfast. We got sat down in this person's office. I can't remember their name, and then it was one almighty explosion. I nearly kept my pants. I can tell you, I was not happy, but yeah, but Morris Cohen, and yeah, he was. I think he was quite a good distributor actually. Yeah. But before that, I don't know because it was before my time.
So, any other questions? Sure. Go on.
So something I have always wondered is that the Amiga was first introduced in '84 or '85, depending how you count. And,
Well, when I count, it's 85, but
Yeah, 85. It was 85 definitely. Which is why the Amiga 30th was held in 2015. It was the 30th anniversary.
Right, you pass later. Sorry.
it was only in 92 or 93, I don't remember well, when we started having the AGA machines. And what I wonder is really...
88.
Yeah, 88, okay. It's like 8 years of gap that the basic hardware didn't actually improve a lot, right? What was going on? Was there some blocking about, was there too many decisions to make, too many options? I'm not sure which one to do.
Can I answer the first part? And Dave will have the information, but you've got to remember, in 85, Commodore bought, at the last minute, Commodore bought the Amiga, bought the Amiga company. And very quickly, within almost no, 84, within no time at all, they produced the Amiga 1000, which was actually quite a poor machine, not, very poorly built, very flimsy, but very quick. They got it to market very quick, and the engineers wanted to, of course, the Amiga engineers wanted to delay it because they wanted to make it better, but Commodore needed to get it out there, and of course they had old Jack, did you say his name, Jack Trammell? Yeah, he had taken over at Atari, and he wanted to hammer Commodore, because obviously they part of the company.
He'd been kicked out.
And he wanted to kill Commodore, so they were very quick. So they brought the Amiga 1000 out, so the Amiga out, it wasn't called the 1000, it was an Amiga. And it was good, it had no software, it was not very expandable, well, it didn't stop people expanding it. And it took a couple of years for people like Dave Haney and Jeff Porter and the likes to create the Amiga 500, the games playing machine, and the Amiga 2000, the serious big box Amiga. And that came out in 87, 2 years later. So you really, the Amiga came out too early, it was far ahead of its time, and it was not expensive compared to PCs. It did far more than PCs could do, but it had no real software base and was struggling. So it took a couple of years really to get a Commodorize the product, to provide a consumer product. Pass over to you now, Dave.
Yeah, well, I mean, basically, the answer to your question about the delay in development is back down again to what I said earlier. There was never any business plan, and so what would happen is that they'd recruit some new manager of engineering, head of engineering, and he'd go along and say, "What are you working on?" "Oh, stop doing that. Nobody wants that. Do this." And then the next person, "Oh, stop doing that, do this." So there was stop, start on all sorts of things. And a lot of the things that the engineers were developing were what they knew was needed. But they'd be told, "Don't do that anymore," because the people who ran the business didn't understand it. And that happened a lot. And they stumbled from one crisis to the next. It really, really was. I mean, a really good example of all of that is this bloody +4, for goodness sake. That was designed by a retarded monkey, and that's not being fair to the monkey.
I think you can say that. Unless the monkey's a reference to somebody.
Yeah, I'm just aping around, really, that's all.
But I won't repeat it, it's alright. I think it's fair to say that, there was the original chipset, the enhanced chipset, the ARGA chip, the AJ chipset, the AAA, which never came out. But by the time the AAA was coming along, all the other systems, or graphics systems, had caught up and were starting to surpass the Amiga.
Yeah, but I mean, the sad thing is really the biggest tragedies of all with ESCOM was that they let technology go that was absolutely outstanding technology. And if I've spoken about this before, I apologise. But Commodore engineers, particularly a guy called Dr. Ed Hepler, was working on a project. He had taken an HP RISC-based core, to which he added a 3D rendering engine, 5.1 surround sound stereo, which in 1994 was sensational, blitter and various other things. And the performance of this thing was unbelievable. And all I can tell you now is that there is nothing on the market today that comes anywhere close to it. And ESCOM just let it go. They just let all the engineers go and didn't follow it up. But they bought it. They had the rights to it. Now, how crazy is that?
I think history will show that ESCOM 1 year later were out of business themselves. So things, perhaps weren't right within ESCOM anyway.
Well, I mean, they didn't know their own identity. Were they manufacturers of PCs? Were they distributors of PCs? Were they retailers? They bought all those bloody Rambo stores, hundreds of stores. And the crazy thing is that in their own stores, they never sold Amigas.
I can remember buying my first PC, so it must have been before.
I don't think they had electricity then.
They did, just I think there's mice and wheels and things. But it wasn't, so it was ESCOM, so it must have been 95, 96. Right, so my first PC was an ESCOM PC, because, they owned Amiga. So I went to the ESCOM store and I bought this PC, and then some guy came in, and they had all these lovely new Amiga 1200s they'd relaunched. And they're all sitting there in boxes. And the customer came in and said, look, I want one of those Amiga 1200s. And the sales guy said, oh, you don't want that, that's just a toy. Let me show you this PC over here. And the price of the Amiga 1200 was actually quite high, but it was with all the software. And with the PC was just the PC. And of course, you'd have to buy all the software on top, he said. And he was given the sales pitch on the PC. And I jumped in, I said, well, actually, that can do much more than that can do, because you've got all the software, the graphics pack, the word processor, the games. And you want it for the kids, they'll love that. They won't love that. He wasn't very happy with me. But apparently that was common in the stores, actually ESCOM branded stores in the UK. They actually didn't sell the Amiga. I don't know whether there are ESCOM stores in Ireland. No.
I don't recall any anyway.
Is the question over there?
Question: why do you think, in general, Commodore systems were far more popular in Europe than in the US? What triggered that?
Yeah, it wasn't that they were more popular in Europe. It's just that we marketed them very well. We had good distribution. We got 64s into Smiths, the newsagents. We got them into British Home Stores and Tesco's, for God's sake. We had distribution everywhere.
There is one other answer though as well, which is I can only talk about England or Britain. There was less disposable income in the UK, and what became really popular in the UK and in Europe in general were games playing machines. The game players, the 500s, the 1200s, the 600s. They were CD32 actually. They were popular, but in the States, where there's more disposable income, it was the big box Amigas that were popular, and they were used professionally. And of course, that was helped by the video toaster, which it was NTSC based and not PAL based that we have probably in the UK, probably in Ireland as well. So we never saw that in this part of the world. Whereas in the States, they were used in lots of small TV stations all around the state, all around the US and Canada. So they had a benefit in they had more disposable income. Two, they had a much bigger market, so their prices were lower. Because I remember at the time in the UK, you think back to pounds before euros, if it was £1,700 in the UK, it was $1,700 in the US. There were big price differences, more disposable income, and a market that wanted, let's call it the professional level big box Amiga. Whereas in the UK in particular, which became the centre for game development, probably in the world at the time, a lot of game companies came out of the UK with all the great games. They got those programmers got their start on Amiga 500s, Amiga 1200s.
Yeah, but there is a more definitive answer to the US situation. Apart from what I told you before about when I went there in 1993, apart from that CD-TV debacle, previously Commodore had lost all of its retail distribution, and the reason why they lost their distribution was because they were started to sell the Commodore 64 and it was everywhere. They did a good job. But what happened was that one of the major retailers over there, Kmart, decided that they wanted to use the Commodore 64 as a lost leader line. So what happened is that they were selling the Commodore 64 for $99, having paid $98 for it. But it meant that when people went in there, they would buy their cassette drive and their software and their joysticks and et al. From there. Now, even though it's illegal, Commodore should have controlled that. They should have said suddenly, I'm sorry, we haven't got stock, we're out of stock, or whatever, because they should have stopped them. Because who else would sell something that to pay $98 and sell it for $99? So all the other retailers dropped it like a ton of bricks.
Man, it is kind of the printer ink model, isn't it? You sell the printer for next to nothing, and then you sell the inks for very expensive. So you get the customer hooked. It's about the drug model, you know. Customer hooked,
you're right.
And then you sell them.
Except that, see, Commodore Inc., the sales division of Commodore in America, they're what I call sales prevention officers. And they because they just let it happen. They said, oh look, Kmart's taking everything we can get. We can't make them any faster. So they just let that happen. So then when you want to launch a new product into the retail channels, you haven't got a retail channel, you've only got Kmart. And Kmart, of course, when Sega came along and said, oh, we've got this games machine or whatever it is, you can sell for $99 and make profit on it, they dropped Commodore 64 like a hot potato. So the US had just got no distribution except in the high-end stuff. And they didn't do big numbers with that anyway. They really didn't. Nowhere near big enough numbers to justify it.
One last question.
Well, thank you for being a great audience. Appreciate it. And if you haven't already booked my book,
what was the
downtimepublishing.com.
Downtime.
Good job.
When do you think the Kickstarter might take place? Do you think it could be this year or the CD
It's definitely, if it's going to happen, it'll be this year. Yeah, I'm hoping to go to Rome to meet this Italian guy, probably in the next 2 to 3 weeks. There's nothing been organised yet, but that's what the plan is. This is a guy who actually friend is going to use as a client as well. He's got several businesses, and friend can do a lot of things for his business. So I've got a good reason to go over there anyway. But he's a guy that I'm told would probably go for this, and he's got money to invest, so I want to get hold of it. It's as simple as that. But only, of course, once we've costed it out. And Dave Hanney and Paul Lasser and Beth Richard have all said that they're happy to work together. And that's a really winning combination, let me tell you. So if I can design the product and we can cost it and it's a doable, viable proposition, then I think we'll do another test market, via the Facebook groups and say, right, this is what it's going to cost for you to buy. How many still want to buy it? And then take it from there. And if it's viable, then rest assured it was something that we'll definitely look at.
And how can we brand it? It's going to be what, Amiga? Or?
No, absolutely not. Because I don't want to get into a fight with Mr. Cloanto over here over the trademark names and things. It doesn't have to be Amiga. I mean, you look at all the products that GVP sold. They sold a zillion products, and none of them had the word Amiga on it.
One of the biggest producers of third-party
Yeah,
peripherals. Yeah,
absolutely. It doesn't need to be. People who want the product, they'll buy it, whether it's got Amiga name on it or not, as long as it does the job that we say it's going to do.
I'd like to end on a little story that nothing to do with Amigas,
Okay.
or Commodore, or ESCOM, or PCs. My first time in Ireland probably was about 1976 or 77. And I was a young geologist, and I was living on the west coast of Scotland, and we had a contract to work offshore on the Porcupine Basin. So, and we had to rig up a geological unit on an offshore rig. So we were going to drive down, get the ferry across from Stranraer to Larne, drive down through Northern Ireland, into the south, and down onto Galway, right down the southwest, and get onto a rig and go and rig it up. No rig jokes, please. Anyway,
What's that rig called, Diana?
Terrible. I'm glad that no one heard that.
No.
Anyway, so we get off the ferry in Belfast. It's about 2 or 3 in the morning. There's Saracen vehicles everywhere. There's cars parked across zebra crossings, and we weren't feeling very. It was the height of the troubles. And we went feeling very, very safe. And as we drove towards the border, there was blown up border posts, and we're thinking, we get to the border and there's no one there, so we said, let's get to Southern Ireland, it's safe. So we got into the south and into Ireland, and really felt relieved, you know, oh, great, okay. And we're driving through, heading down south, and we stopped about halfway near the race courses of the Curragh, and we stopped there, and we thought, you know, jeans on, going to work, and we looked up the menu, and we thought, got to have Guinness, because what do we know? Guinness, right? Could have been Murphy's, but it was Guinness. We'll have Guinness. And then, oh, they got pies. Oh, we're hungry. Mince pie, steak pie, 50 pence, because it was pence in those days, or whatever it was, punts. Gaelic pie, £1. While we're in Ireland, let's get the Gaelic pie. She said, no, lads, you don't want those. That's just for the tourists. And for me, I thought that was really great. You know, they didn't see us as tourists. They saw us as young working lads, you know, going about our business. And we weren't Americans to be ripped off. And if there's any Americans in the room, I apologise, because my son-in-law's American, so they're not all bad. Thank you very much.
What are your plans on the 18th and 19th of January next year?
At the moment, they look pretty open.
If I can still be alive, that's a good result.
A very connected and related question. How many drinks have you been offered today?
Today, 0. No, that's not true. No, Trevor bought me a Diet Coke. Most of the stuff is sitting over there.
Michael Batalana bought me a Guinness. I think it was a bribe, but I'm willing to be bribed again.
We'll be in the pub at 7 o'clock, so if you want our great guests to come back next year.
Anyway, thanks very much.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Ladies, thank you.
Stay there. We're going to draw for the TF328 actually now, so just check who's got the right answers. Now there's only 6 entries. Are you happy enough with that? Has everyone had a go, yeah?
I've still got a webcam stream. Do you want to speak about the pan?
Yeah, 2 secs.
Did you have your wine and your lens on?
All the answers right, though, is the question.
All of the answers are right. all the answers that are in here are the same.
Do you want to speak? That one there.
Yeah, so the draw for the TF328. Everyone got the same answers, but everyone got the last answer wrong. But we'll forgive you for all that. His code name is Plasma B, actually. Terrible Files' his company, but there's only there's 5 entries here, so yeah, you're very good odds here. So who wants to take it? Yeah, David, you take it.
Blood plasma. Lift it up so I can't see.
Okay.
Is that Plasma B? Does that stand for blood?
I don't know actually. I'm sure it's a programming term, is it? There we go. All right, thanks, David. You want to read it out?
Yeah, Spellbound. It's Simon Verghese. I know Simon.
You want all the names. You want all the names of boys.
Well done, Simon. Coming up. That's great.
See, I told you I'd do you a favour.
Sorry? It's revision 1. So you won't need to get a riser for it. So I think it's sitting here. Yep. Congratulations. Thank you very much. And we want to see it next year working. Yes. Okay. Very good. Well done.
I'm going to call up the curator of the Computer and Communications Museum of Ireland, who's here today. The museum have been incredibly good to us in allowing us into their museum, and the Commodore section there now has begun to expand. They're looking into sourcing more models. They have a core collection and another collection that's on display that people can use. So the kids today are coming in and they're seeing the Commodore 64, the Amiga with games or software running, and they're picking up joysticks and waving them around in the air and wondering why nothing's happening. And it's fantastic to see it. The museum is very active and is very involved in the community, and the curator is here with me today, Brendan Smith.
Many thanks. I'd just like to say first, I used to hate Commodore with a vengeance, because I was the Apple salesman for Ireland, and we opened up an Apple branch in Galway in 1981. And there were 3 retail outlets selling computers. One was ourselves, the other one was a TV store, and the third was Declan Europe, who were a big agent in Ireland for Commodore that I mentioned earlier. And it was a head-to-head war between us and them. Commodore were well ingrained into the educational system, particularly third level. It was known, as you know, as the teacher's pet in many cases. They had very good business software, and they could do what we couldn't do with Apple. They could network together and therefore share drives and share printers. So it was us and them. Now, I'm late today because I've been teaching since 9 o'clock this morning until 3 o'clock at a group known as Coder Dojo. And everybody thinks Coder Dojo is unique. And what we do is we, as volunteers, come together and mainly on Saturdays, and we teach people how to code. And everybody thinks, oh, we're the first people really to do this. And it started off in Ireland back in 2012, and now it's right across Europe. And we call ourselves the GAA of the technology world. Every village town is supposed to have this computer club. But back in 1981 and 82, Commodore were organising these clubs in Ireland. And in Galway, every Saturday, just like we're doing today so many decades later, they were teaching people how to code BASIC. And I have front page articles about all the great work that they actually did, you know. So way before everybody else was doing it, Commodore in Ireland under their agent was doing that. Now, as Jarlath says, we have lots of different sections in the museum. And it's not just a computer museum, it's a communications museum. And we always talk about where writing began, which is where communications began, really. And it was back 5,500 years in a place now known as Iraq, which was halfway between the great civilizations in India and Pakistan, known as Harappa, and on the other side was Egypt. And thanks to irrigation, we had civilization, people settled down, then international trade started to happen. And the first people to develop communications, we say, were accountants. So accountants, today people look at them as very boring people, but back 5,500 years ago they were keeping track of commodities. And if you look at what that writing was, it was hieroglyphics. And when we look at the little slabs that we have in the museum of writing, what's it all based on? Pictures. And if you look today on your phone, we're based on pictures. So writing has gone full circle. This was the international communications element. Yeah, so that's what it was. So pictures is where it started, and pictures is where it is at the moment. And if you're following the Bible or the Quran or anything, we know about the Tower of Babel. We all spoke the same language, and then we turned against God or whatever. Well, actually, we did have the same language, and that was writing. And then we look in the development of the libraries, which was the gatherings of information, of big data, as it was then with the Greeks, and then the Romans setting up libraries across the great world. And then when the German tribes and the Gothics came in, they were an oral people, they had no interest in writing, and they only used the books and libraries as fire fuel to keep them warm at night times. And then it was the great Irish monks. When we became Christianized, we went right across Europe and we collected all that data and transcribed it and so on. And then the next big changes in communications, and we have sections on this, was the 19th century with the development of European empires. They needed to keep track of their resources, their armies, moving them fast. So in the 19th century we had the Industrial Revolution, the Scientific Revolution, we had the development of international communications with the telegraph, with the railways, and with the typewriter, and with the Gestetner. So we have sections on that. And then we bring you up to the 1960s with the development of the mini computers. And in 1971, Galway opened up Digital Equipment Corporation, or Digital, then the second largest company in the world, computer company in the world, sorry, after IBM, opened up their first overseas operation, and that was in Galway, and we became the first digital city in Europe. And the reason why once they came, a lot of the other American multinationals came as well. And why did they come? They came for a number of reasons, but one of them was that we were about to enter the European market. We were also English speaking. We had a good European, we had a good educational system. And then Apple came in 1981. So from that era, Galway and Ireland became the hardware capital of Europe. Lots of the Americans opened up their operations here and then sold into the rest of Europe. So Ireland has a very long tradition of digital technology. And as I was saying, as the example was a Commodore, we also have a very long tradition of education and using computers in education. And we also have a very rich tradition of women. Women have been airbrushed out of their history books because of who writes the books, but the victors. The first computer program or algorithm was developed by Ada Lovelace. The first COBOL computer, first business programming language, was developed by Grace Hopper. A lot of the icons we use on Apple were developed by women like Susan Carey. So there's a lot of hidden histories. And women in many ways dominated computer programming up until the 70s. And a lot of the blame for women not being involved in computers as much as they should be is because of companies like Commodore. Because what happened was, with the desktop computers becoming very popular in the 1970s and home computers, how were home computers sold? A lot of them were sold using games. And what did parents do? They started to buy those game consoles and computers for the boys. So girls were left out of the loop, so to speak. And now we're playing catch up. So Earl is involved in the Computer Museum. Alana Kelly, who's here somewhere, is involved. Oh, there you are, Alana, is also involved in the Computer Museum. So I would ask you to come along, look at the history of computing, look at the role of young people, look at the role of Irish people, look at the role of women. You know, so it's a good history, and it's a never-ending story of change. We bring it right up today with smart city technology, IoT, and so on. You know, so it's a story, and it's a living story.
Thanks, Brendan. And just before you finish up, you're starting a green screen streaming area. And where can people tune into that?
Yeah, well, literally I got the green screen today, so I haven't actually worked out the finer details, but I will put it up on the website over the next few weeks, which is ccmireland.com. Yeah.
Thanks so much, Brendan.
No problem. Thank you.
Tomas Andrikovic, would you like to have a quick chat about the KA Plus magazine?
But you have the
You want to?
just without.
We can arrange that if you want.
If you use the projector, it doesn't work.
Andrew, could we point the stream at the wall there for the projector?
Yeah, I don't know how we position it though.
Okay, I can help you lift the table.
Okay, yeah, that'll do. By the way, Andy, says
delay, okay. There's a microphone there, and your screen is on, that's not bad actually.
yeah, it's
Probably bring it closer.
yeah. I'm gonna have to move the PC to the side so I manage the shot. Next year I'll have a better computer. I'll have something more professional to do.
Yeah, we'll have a better, more organised setup. Let's go a bit closer.
Yeah, I'll make sure to set a preset for the
So we're going to have a talk from Tomas from KA Plus magazine. KA Plus magazine is an absolutely gorgeous magazine. There are 8 issues at the moment, and Tomas is going to take us through some of the information on how they put it together and some of their past covers. The artwork is absolutely amazing on them. They're on sale here for €7 per issue.
I'm afraid that... Hello? Yeah, I'm afraid I don't have any more English copies.
Oh wow, fantastic.
Thanks to all of you.
Yeah.
It's in English as well.
I do have some Polish if you
We have some Polish copies. Do you want to take it away then, Thomas?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi guys.
right problem.
Okay, my name is Tomasz. I run the Commodore Amiga Plus magazine, and I would like to present you with 2 slides about the magazine itself, our history, and what we are all about. So it all started in 1992 in January. By the way, we come from Poland, so we were behind the Iron Curtain. It's a completely different story from Western markets. So back in 1992, there was Commodore and Amiga CNA magazine. Altogether, between 1992 and 1985, there were 46 issues released. And this magazine pretty much acted as the main source of information for Commodore users in Poland. These are few covers. It was quite professionally prepared. 70,000 copies every month. That's quite a big number, especially in today's values. 25 years later, in December 2007, there was a group of passionate Commodore users in Poland, and they created a CNA Fan magazine. The goal was to bring the memory, resurrect the classic magazine, It was distributed only in the digital form. Altogether, between 2007 and 2013, there were 11 issues released. And this is the covers these guys produced. Simultaneously, the same team, the same editorial crew, created another magazine called CNA Games, and they fully focused on Commodore gaming. So they were, in fact, producing two magazines at the same time, and the gaming magazine was dedicated to all 8 and 16 bits platforms. And around the same time, we have another group called Comoda, and they were running another magazine, 10 issues released between 2010 and 2014. And when all of these groups get a bit tired, they all merged. And in 2014 December, we created KNA Plus magazine. So whatever you can see right now is the common work of all those people. In April 2015, that was the first issue of KNA published in both Polish and English. And this is how it looked. And what exactly we do? We target, first of all Commodore platforms and systems. So those are 8, 16 bits and NG Amigas. We focus on games and gaming culture. We distribute on in internet, obviously, digital versions and also on paper in both Polish and English. Our current coverage is about 3K downloads for every issue and 200 hard copies. And the goal is exactly to revive the atmosphere on 80s and 90s through passionate retro journalism. And this is what we prepared so far. On average, we produce one issue per 3-4 months. Who are we? We are a group of 16 to 20 people between 20 and 50 years old. We are mostly from Poland. We have one person from Greece. And we have multiple collaborators from all around the world. For example, Jarlab, our own Jarlab, produced a single article for us, Wi-Fi on C64, which was very well received. What we value content, obviously. We try to be regularly produced. We like to put effort on the visuals, on make it beautiful. And we try to be unique, of course. We don't copy, we produce fresh and high quality information. And the life cycle of a single issue looks like this. We write articles. Writing happens, of course, in our native language in Polish, which is then being proofread by linguistic editors. Then we have translators who localize the content into English. And then we have creative writers from Australia, Ireland, US, and England, I believe, who are doing the creative rewrite, so basically make it well polished in English as well. And then finally we put it all together in the PDF as a DTP publishing, and we finish up with QA. Altogether it takes us 2.5–3 months for each issue. And finally I would like to show you a few slides of what we accomplished so far. So every single issue contains fresh news. So every quarter we write about new games that have been produced in this period. We include lots of game reviews, and those are all the 8 and 16 bits. So over here you can see Class 4 and 64 game reviews. But you can also find the new games for Amiga. For example, You Shoot, published last year, or the Times Fury that we could have played today. We focus also on art. We like to feature cute art from both Amiga and C64. We also feature artists who create content for X games. For example, here we had two Swedish guys who created Moonstone artwork, which is amazing. We even featured those works on our cover. And because we are all in the business for quite a long time, we had some contacts. We interviewed famous people. We talked to Richard Garriott, creator of Ultima. We spoke to Jordan Mechner about Karateka and Prince of Persia. We spoke to John Hare, Andreas Falkenhan, creator of Moonstone, Rob Anderson, who shared the original drawings from Design Fence. We spoke to Jens Schoenfeld and multiple other people. We prepare tutorials, the technical works. how to tweak your Amigas. This is Jala's article about C64 on Wi-Fi. We talk about restoration, and this article describes how to restore C128. We do event reports. This is the largest Polish event, Pixel Heaven, happening in Warsaw every year.
When does it happen this year?
Around June or July, something about that. This was the kickoff to World Cup happening in Dublin 2 years ago. We also like to create articles about gaming genres. So not a single game, but just talk about the genre itself. So for example, here we have Amiga fighting games guide. And here are, for example, movie games from Datasoft. We like to include maps, like being completely old style. People go game by game and just create those visual maps, which is pretty much awesome, we believe, because nobody does it anymore. We like to talk about the history, especially our own history when stuff looked different, pre-internet of course. And we like to feature new stuff, like the interview with Trevor. Trevor, remember this interview?
I do, yes.
Performed by Krzysztof, our colleague. We are also heavy about editorials. We write about all these nostalgic, crazy things we can imagine, or rules of the demo scene to stay up to date. We have discussion panels where we drop a topic and all of the editorial crews express their thoughts about a given topic. We have hand-driven art featured in every single issue. And finally, the interview we included in the number 9, the latest issue with David Pleasance, which was also a pleasure to do. Cool, so this is how you can reach us: Facebook, our own website, Twitter, and email. If you feel that you would like to write something one day, please contact us. We're always looking for new collaborators, people who can talk about any different topic. You're always welcome. And I'm happy to answer the questions, if they are.
So where's the magazine published? In Poland, is it?
It's
printed, sorry.
It's printed in Poland, yeah. We have 2 guys dedicated to logistics, and we send it worldwide. The delivery to European Union is €5 per package from Poland, and we have online store on our website.
And some of the print magazines do cover CDs and things like that. What about doing those?
We are thinking about actually about including a floppy. That would be something really cool. We do have cover discs on our server, so you can download. This can be like unpublished games or art or anything like this. But we are really thinking about including a floppy to make it great.
Yeah, very good. Well done.
Okay, thank you very much. Oh, yeah?
Can you tell us about the first issue, like how the team, how the people got together, how they knew each other, and the process of making the first issue, what decision you had to make?
So the story is quite simple yet complicated. Those 2 magazines that I featured before, those 2 editorial crews, the owners of these magazines lived very close to each other in South Poland. They knew each other through their common work, and they get together, from beer to beer. They had the idea. We released the first version. It was like a merge of 2 editorial crews. Unfortunately, after the first issue, Ramos, quite famous Polish singer, passed away at a very young age, and we were all blocked for 6 months. And the fact that I'm here today is probably because of this situation. I said we just cannot let it go. We have to do something about it, and we put ourselves together. We learned things that we never done before, like publishing, and we done the second issue just to commemorate our friend. So this was a big thing. Some people left; they didn't feel that they can or won't do it anymore. But the best part of it is that after every single issue released, we have 1, 2, 3 new people joining our crew, and this is great because the fresh blood is what we exactly what we need.
And for people who want to contact, get in touch about where you are, I suppose, what is the website address?
So for people who want to contact us, Facebook is the easiest way. Obviously, K&A Plus website and the email.
Thank you. Yeah, I love the magazine.
Thank you very much.
Working
We might post some photos later.
Well, I actually can't drink, so.
So we're going to wrap it up soon. But just right now, could we get everybody over to this side for a good photograph, please? And then the staff is going to come in just to take a snap for it. We got one last year, it was lovely. But last year Trevor took the photo and wasn't in it, so Trevor will be in the photo this time. Can we get everybody just to come along here? Face the Amiga big corner. The Amiga big corner.
My baby.
Did you go?
Yeah, I'm stuck.
Who's got a phone? Anybody got a phone with a big camera on it?
Yeah, just a phone. Thanks.
Photography skills off. Where do I turn this on?
Is it on, Dermot? Quick tutorials.
Do you want me to put a camera on a tripod and do a timer on it?
There's a weird timer.
Okay, we'll use
Put that on a tripod.
bad job.
Still won't put the cup down.
Cheese.
Attendance.
Roughly 60. Yeah. Wow. Good. There are 60 of these walking around. I don't know if they're all here now, but
I quite like a couple walk, 2 or 3 walking a day. Just walking.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it's nice stuff. I quite like.
Yeah, a few big blank ones just. Yeah, I think that one, yeah.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Guys, I'm just going to take the picture because I.
Yeah. No, I have this one, so it's.
I think that's even better.
We're going to test one, guys.
Okay, please.
Done without you.
So I'll just stand here.
Are you all ready? So 1, 2, 3, big cheers.
Hey! No, it's going to be Amiga. 1, 2, 3.
Cool, thanks lads.
Thank you.
No problem.
Yes? MS.
What was after the MS?
What's this word?
What's after the MS? Mad lemon. As in the lemon that's not very sane.
What's that word? Yeah.
Yes.
It is sane nowadays. That's true.
Very good. Can I take a quick picture of you? Because I didn't even know your channel existed until I came down here. So I'm going to take a because I have a lot of hardware. I don't donate to the I didn't really do anything on Twitter before my Twitter profile was like that, and then once I went to that for 4 days, and then for the next 261 days, and then the next year I did the same again, and I did that for 4 years, and every time I did that, I do like about a week a month, followed by about a week a day, and I would pick up about 3 or 4 followers a year, so it kind of grew, but I haven't gone for the last few years.
I mean, we got more, I mean, I was born in 84, so we got ours when I was like 9 years old. So it was since then, I've been in love with it. But Commodores were only been open, and so back then I always wanted one, but Amiga. I admire people, I admire people. It's just, I wish I had more fun. It's still